Hi, we are Trent and Carmen Post. We are the founders and executive directors of Make Your Mark. We call Ethiopia our home. We just want to bring you these videos. We're going to entitle them Undone. And really, it's going to be a series of videos that is going to go through things that we experienced in our very own lives. The purpose of this videos is to bring hope and healing and forgiveness and power so that you can be free and you can be everything that God created you to be. Know that we are not experts on any topic. We are simply speaking from our life experience. If you disagree with anything that we say, please have grace with us because again, we are sharing from our life experience, and our hope is that we can empower people to embrace their story and be set free. So what we plan to do is do a 12-month series. So each month we are going to dig into a new topic. January, we're going to talk about sexual abuse. Did you know that 1 out of 5 girls have been sexually abused, and 1 out of every 20 boys have been sexually abused? Do you know that kids are at their most vulnerable age from the age of 7 and 13? Today, we're simply going to share our stories of sexual abuse and the impact it had on our lives.
Yeah, and we're hoping that, well, we share our stories a lot, and we're hoping that it helps bring healing into people's lives. A lot of the topics that we'll talk about, and especially this one, it's heavy. Sexual abuse is one of those taboo things. Nobody wants to talk about it. And then a lot of people feel alone. They feel like they're the only ones suffering or dealing with this. But the truth is, we just heard the statistics. I mean, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 20. It happens. It happens a lot. And we need to talk about it more. So that we can help people be free from it, so that you can be free from it and find that healing that you're looking for. And so, yeah, we're just going to share our stories and what we've learned, and from, as we always say, life experience. We can all learn a lot from that if we really look into it in a deep way. My story starts, I guess, growing up in a fatherless home. My dad left when I was 3. I had a single mom raising 3 boys. And so she was working a lot. I was a latchkey child, a lot of free time. With that, though, a lot of babysitters. And then there was this one babysitter when I was 9 years old who was double my age that did things with me that were inappropriate, sexual. And then that really began to mess up my view of girls. And then it didn't only happen once, it began to happen more. And then being a young boy, 9 years old, and also looking for affirmation and purpose and who am I began to enjoy it. I began to like it because it fulfilled something in me, this void that I was trying to fill. And so more babysitting sessions, and actually outside of babysitting, full sexual acts would take place. And so at 9 years old, I didn't really know how to process and deal with all that. Looking back, I know that it really messed up my view of girls and their worth and what they're for. I don't want to dive too deep into that and how it affected me, because that's what our next session will be about, of like the effects of sex abuse and what that does to a child, what that does into our futures. But yeah, it really messed me up throughout my adolescence, my teenage years, and into my adult life.
And it's quite funny how the enemy can use sexual abuse and kind of disguise it as love, as affection, as like an acceptance thing, like you just heard in Trent's story. I know that for me, when I was growing up, my home was very dysfunctional. When I was 8 years old, I watched my father slit my mom's throat. And so those were the type of an environment that I was in as a very little girl. And so sexual abuse really disguised itself to love to me. And so while things were dysfunctional at home and crazy and chaotic, and things, I was being traumatized by the abuse that my mom endured from my father. And here I was going to nursery, I'm going to daycare. Both of my parents worked, and I'm going to daycare. This is a place where you think that your child should be safe. And statistics show that it's mostly men that are doing the abusing, but in my case, it was a woman. It was a wife She was a wife to someone. And so I would go to daycare and she would do things to my little body that were off limits. I remember nap time, like she would come. There's kids all in the room. There's a teacher assistant in the room, guys. And she would come and she would get under my blanket with me and start touching my body in places that she should not. She was very affectionate, very huggy and lovey and touchy. And with things crazy at my house, it was almost like as a little 6-year-old, 7-year-old girl, like that became what love was supposed to be for me. The other kids would go outside and play, and she would keep me in the room, and she would put me on the cot, and she would do things that only a husband should do to their wife. This was a woman in daycare. That was my first experience with sexual abuse. There were other times, there were family members that had abused me sexually, and then it just kind of crept into, this is a part of who I am, and this is what love means to me. And if someone loves me, then this must be the way that they show me what love is. And so those are the ways that Trent and I experienced sexual abuse as young kids.
Yeah, and the thing is about sexual abuse, as I was saying before, it's one of those things that we want to act like doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And we don't want to believe the kids when it does happen. But the truth is it does. It happens everywhere. It was happening in my home. It was happening in a daycare. And it does. And it leaves us confused. It leaves us really brokenhearted. It begins to mess with our heart, with our emotions, with our feelings. And it's what sexual abuse has done to a lot of us, and to those of you who are listening. I'm sure you were left feeling really brokenhearted. But we are believers, and we believe that the Lord is the one who brought the true healing onto our hearts through a long journey, and you'll continue to hear our story throughout these sessions. But we know that Psalms 34:18 says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and He'll save those that have a crushed spirit. And so He is close, and we're going to be sharing more and getting into detail, as I said, through sessions. But even in the darkness and in the pain, we learn in our life that God was there. He was in those moments.
And here's a powerful, our minds are a powerful tool. Do you know that I pushed being sexually abused by the lady in daycare, by a babysitter, a girl babysitter when I was a young little girl that abused me, by a family member? My mind was so powerful that it pushed that away, where I did not remember until I was pregnant with my first child. All of a sudden, I'm about ready to bring this child in this world, and I am freaking out. And all of these memories start flooding me. And then I have to tell my mom, and she's asking me why I never told her before. And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't even remember until this moment. And so I want to encourage some of you that may be listening to or watching right now, if something comes up and it stirs up, I want you to know that you are not alone. You are not alone. It is not your fault. Society will try to make you think that it's your fault. Your flesh will try to make you think that it's your fault. The enemy will make you try to think it's your fault. The predator will try to make you think it's your fault. And I want you to know that it is never your fault.
Yeah, and I think that's a good ending point, because that also will go into our next session, which is what are the effects of sexual abuse? What do they do on us? Not only as the child in that moment, but yes, as she just shared, into our future. How does this abuse affect us, and what did it do to us? So that's what we'll be sharing in our next session. We have a new podcast too that we just started up. Is it Trent and Carmen Undone?
I'm done.
Trent and Carmen Undone. And so those of you who are listening on the podcast, we welcome you. Sorry we didn't say that at the beginning. And those of you who are watching, you could follow our podcast too. Hopefully we'll have some interviews and people on there in the future.
Yeah, and if you have any stories that you would like to share with us, please do not hesitate to comment on this video, to reach out to us and send us a private message. If you'd like to share your story on our podcast, we would love to have your intake, because here's what we believe. We believe that when we talk about the hurt, we talk about the bad, and we just bring it out of darkness. And when things things are brought out of darkness. Light covers over it, and it can be dark no more.
Yeah, and even if you don't want to share on our podcast, just reach out to us. It's a safe place to share, because as you just said, it's powerful when we can find somewhere safe to share, to be transparent, to be just vulnerable. And so we want to be that place for you too, if you need that, and definitely confidentiality, and we respect all that. But we're just here to help. We want to see healing and freedom come into people's lives. So we appreciate you guys watching with us and being with us, and we look forward to continue to share our lives with you now and into the future.
Ciao.
Ciao.